Rich, you're
Well, that was a brilliant start.
Rich, you're starting.
See, I'm sitting here waiting for Rich to do his.
Just keep rolling. Be on the blooper reel.
That's right. Well, hey guys, what's going on? You know, we've been talking about 1982, but I think the three of us, me being Dr. Durant or Rich Hurley, and you being Lou Malagrana, and you over there being Max Overnighter, I think it's time that we jump into our 20-year time machine and talk about 1962.
Oh, I'm ready. Let's do it.
What a great idea. Are we getting the time machine now?
Yeah, fire that sucker up. We haven't.
Can we all fit in there? It's a little small.
Little snug.
Don't worry about it. We'll fit.
Apparently.
All right, let's see if we can get it started.
All right.
Oh, wow, what are all these dials?
Oh.
All right. Well, hey guys. Well, welcome to night. There you go. Well, welcome to 1962. I know it's your first time around, for you two guys, but it isn't my first time around. But don't be afraid, guys. You guys can come on out there. There's no fuzzy-headed, curly-headed men because they all have short hair and look just like you guys. Smell like Brill Cream and Old Spice. Come on out. Let's take a look.
Thank God. Wow. The air seems a lot cleaner.
What's going on around here?
Yeah, oddly enough. Yeah. And while we're here, Lou, don't forget to gas up the time machine, because gas is only like 36 cents a gallon here right now. So
I'm going to stock up to take back home because we're getting screwed today.
Well,
that's for sure.
You might not want to do that because all the gas here is leaded, so it's going to mess up the catalytic converter. So, but we'll fix the time machine when we get back. So let's take a look around, shall we?
Now, Max, being that you were alive during this time period, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about what was popular back in 1962?
Max, weren't you like 87 years old in 1962?
No, as a matter of fact, I was probably still running around pooping diapers. But I will tell you about
how much different from today.
Correct. I'm going back forward in time. But anyway, when we started talking about wanting to do this and, getting more on a serious note, like I said, if you were to look back at a time and ask somebody, for a pivotal time period for pop culture and history, historical pop culture, I think very few people would probably say 1962, but they couldn't be further from the truth, because 1962 was a very pivotal year for popular culture. Myself being an old-time radio fan, I think of 1962 as being the end of the golden age of radio.
No more Johnny Dollar?
No more Johnny Dollar. That's right. As a matter of fact, Johnny Dollar and Suspense both aired their final episodes on September 30th, 1962, which is recognized as the day that radio handed off to television as the primary source of in-home family entertainment. And a lot of great programs were on television at the time. Oh, yeah. Beverly Hillbillies, the Jetsons. What else did you guys do? A lot of television programs.
McHale's Navy, the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, the Lucy Show.
Yeah.
Johnny Carson took over for the Tonight Show back then in that year.
Yeah. So
that's
so a lot of
Rich's favorite, the Merv Griffin. Wait, Rich, wasn't your favorite the Merv Griffin Show?
Yes, I did like the Merv
from Seinfeld. You went and picked the set out of the garbage and set up in your living room.
Isn't that wonderful? Ooh, the radio died in 62, really? Ooh, Tell us more, Max.
Old-time radio was great.
Yeah.
Television definitely changed the medium for people because you weren't just listening. So one thing of radio is you listen and then your imagination would stir what you would see. Now they're telling you what it's going to look like, right? So that's the thing about old time radio that I'm attracted to, because it's all theater of mind. It's kind of like when you ask people that if you saw a movie and they go, well, the book was better. Okay, and the book doesn't have pictures, most of the time, because what it does is that through the words and in radio, it's through sound, you kind of see your own vision.
and so that was the thing. What made radio so makes radio so special to me. And you look forward. Okay, 1962. It stopped. So it was all visual. The boob tube, and and then but now if you look at it, it's kind of funny how things come back, because old time radio came back in 1974. WOR started airing a program called CBS Radio Mystery Theater, and that was E.G. Marshall, and guys that were popular in old time radio, from the 50s and 60s, and old CBS Radio Mystery Theater ran until 1982. So people were interested in that again, and they had 1,300, almost 1,400 episodes of CBS Radio Mystery Theater. And now we want to fast forward into today. You look at things that were influenced by old time radio. We have audiobooks. We have things called podcasts. I don't know if you've ever heard of one of those, but if you go to someplace and want to listen to a podcast, it's all audio. So now people that right now are listening, anyone that would be listening to this, just from our voices, if they don't know who we are or what we look like, they would probably imagine what we look like. I mean, they wouldn't recognize.
Handsome, I would like to say that.
Exactly. Right. I mean, nobody would recognize me as a cross between Brad Pitt and that other really good-looking guy, and I mean, and they can barely see the flowing golden locks on Lou Melograna.
Yes, I feel like Thor with this long golden hair.
There you go.
Yes.
So I mean. So 1962. I mean, there was so many things. I mean, that were going on. That are.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Max, so that you put the connection between that and podcasts, because actually there are quite a few podcasts that just all they do is you can find that they replay old radio shows, and I think there's something that's real kind of zen about listening to those. I enjoy listening to those, especially before going to bed at night or something like that, because it kind of it's more of a slower paced thing to enjoy. The same reason why people enjoy vinyl again. It's like you listen to the whole record. You're not just cutting through like, this song sucks, I'm moving on to the next one when you're on your iTunes
with a push of a button, right?
Yeah, exactly.
See, and I've got an app on my phone for old time radio. Lately, I've been listening to a lot of.
I gotta get the app.
What's that?
I gotta get the app.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I listen right now.
There was a lot.
Yeah, so right now, I mean, lately I've been into the.
Oh, go. Sorry, Max.
Hold on. Ready?
Go ahead.
Go.
Who, me? Yeah. I mean, all I was going to say is that like I said, I've got the app. I listen to podcasts on my Spotify app, but I have an old time radio app that I listen to, and lately I've been listening to your what am I into right now? I'm listening to The Shadow right now. As a matter of fact.
The Shadow's great. Yeah, that's a great one. Yep. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Yep. There's so many good shows, but going off radio, like right into television, like we were talking a little bit before, I think that for me, I always like older stuff, one, because I'm older, but I like even stuff before my time. I think part of what you were saying before is that in those days, ideas were still new, right? I mean, you weren't, now it's like you watch a movie, we just saw this before, they're just kind of remaking the shit they already made over and over, the stuff they already made over and over and over again. And like, we put some new CGI in or some new special effects, or well, here's the story. I mean, if you watch Top Gun Maverick, it's Star Wars: A New Hope. They're flying into the Death Star to shoot into a 3-meter hole. It's the exact same concept. I'm like, it's the same thing, but back then all the ideas were so original because there was very little that was, done yet. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's interesting about it is that I happened to look it up because I'm a nerd, but I had to look at that transition time. I mean, everybody had radios. I mean, you had radios, in your cars already. You had radios, but only 90% of U.S. households had television sets. 90%, and if you had one, it was typically you had one, and it was that giant piece of furniture. The
you
big
get the lift, the whole 8-foot. piece of wood,
Yeah,
that 5,000 pounds, and
right. You know, the big picture too. And now, I mean, you look now. I mean, people got television sets in every room, and they're
yeah,
walking around with one, you know, with
you
them
can
in
hang
their
them on
hand.
the wall. You can hang them on
What do
the
you,
wall like
what
a
a,
picture.
what, or the ceiling, whatever you like. You build it into your refrigerator,
It's only this thin.
right?
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about physical media, I hope we've got enough room in the time machine, because I just hit that newsstand over there and I just bought every copy that I possibly could of Amazing Fantasy 15, which, if you are a comic book fan, you know is the first
I was
appearance
gonna say, you
of
better be talking about
Spider-Man.
comic books, Rich, and not about some
Comic
other
book.
amazing Playboy
Yeah.
fantasy or something.
Boom, chicka
And
boom.
this
It's a
was
family
really
show.
the takeoff point to the Marvel universe as we know it today, that that everybody's crazy about. I mean, of course, you had the Fantastic Four, which really started the modern age, or the Silver Age of Marvel. But Spider-Man is by far the biggest known character, Marvel character, and of course, what is more popular today than all those Marvel films? In '82, we had more of the TV programs like the Incredible Hulk, which we've talked about before, and there was a
Mhm.
live action Spider-Man show as well. But you were really getting into, I mean, '62 is the start of kind of cool pop culture, because you're really getting into that. Just a few years down the road, we're going to be hitting the Batman TV series and things along
Yes.
those lines. But Marvel Comics really started off like the pop art phase of things. And
Yeah.
I mean, Stan Lee was notorious for making, not notorious, but he made the readers, feel like they were part of a family. All the stories were set in New York City, so they were set in places that actually existed. And he would often talk to the readers directly through Stan's soapbox or the letter pages and things along those lines, and encouraged kids to join the Merry Marvel Marching Society and the fan groups and things along like that. So you felt like you were part of something when you were reading Marvel comics, and
Right.
that fandom still exists to this day.
Right.
I think that's pretty amazing. It really is. I mean, you start to, as technology came to be, right, and they started. Max, you were saying this before. We talked a little bit about sponsors and stuff for TV shows. Way back in the day, it was one sponsor did one. Even radio shows did one program, and if you look at today, there's, let's see how many people we can shove into a half-hour TV show. How many can we shove in there?
Mhm.
How many products we get? I mean, it's just a whole different phase. Like, they focused on things. It wasn't all over the place, and I think that makes a huge difference in what you used to watch and so on. But even like you're saying with Rich, even with like the comics and stuff, I mean, that's where everything took off. That's where Marvel made its big stay. And you talk about something that was brand is what, Amazing Fantasy, and then now you've got Spider-Man. I mean, you have all these different characters all have their own comics and so on that spawned off
Mhm.
that little piece. I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think Max, well, you were a tiny kid at that time, but I know you're a big trading card collector.
He did have his beard,
And
though.
along the same
He did
lines,
have his beard. Just like,
the Mars Attacks trading cards came out in 1962.
did they really?
That's awesome.
And that's kind of an interesting period, because we were talking a little bit about it off mic before we started, about how you were saying that we had the space race was in full effect, because of course you had John F. Kennedy as president at that time, who promised that we'd have a man on the moon by the end of the decade. And your sci-fi sort of switched from where Mars Attacks is the aliens invading, but sci-fi took more of a positive spin in the early 60s. Like, we're pioneers, we're going into space, we're exploring space, we're gonna be out there. And of course you see that reflected down the lines in a lot of the science fiction you see later on in the 60s. Of course, the most popular one being Star Trek, which is based on a Western, and Westerns were huge in 1962 on television.
Right. Yeah. A lot of stuff. I mean, when I was looking through all the programs that were popular, and a lot of them, again, come from, they started off as radio programs, and transitioned into radio.
But yeah, the westerns were popular. A lot of the stuff coming into the early '60s was still some of that leftover uh, the space stuff. The aliens and you know because that was what was featured in a lot of those Sunday theaters for kids. The space stuff, and then the monsters. So and spies.
Right.
So that was where we went, and you had some interesting information on that monster thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, you had in the late 50s, you had the shock theater packages, which hit the television airwaves and syndication, which unleashed all the Universal monster pictures on television, and kids ate that up. They loved it. Frankenstein, Wolfman, Dracula, all those monsters. They were really into that. And of course, in the late 50s, you had another fandom starting with Famous Monsters magazine, which again, this guy predated Stan Lee. You've got Forrest J. Ackerman, who he was the same thing. He created this fandom in his magazine. Like, we need more readers like, and some kid would send in his picture and it'd be a picture of a young Lou Malagrana, like, I read Famous Monsters magazine. And, it was all stuff like that. And he created, you were part of a family. You were part of a group that's what fandom is all about. And you can see the early stages of fandom starting here in the late 50s, early 60s with things along those lines, like we talked about with Amazing Fantasy and Marvel Comics. You've got it predated here in Famous Monsters. And the monster craze really was in full swing in 62, because in 1961, the Aurora monster model kits were released, and those hit hard. And so every other toy company was just out there in 62. What can we throw a monster on? What can we make that's a monster? What type of monster toys can we put out there for kids to play with? So you're talking, you're in full swing with the monster kid craze at that time in 62.
Right.
And of course, that's my favorite era to deal with. Sadly, I wasn't alive in the early 60s, but I was alive for the second portion of the monster kid wave, which happened in the 70s. And I feel I was even luckier enough to have that, because I got to enjoy all the goodies from the 60s. I could find them at garage sales or yard sales or whatever, and then got the new stuff that was coming out in the 70s that they were making.
For a quarter that you will now pay hundreds of dollars for the same stuff.
Right?
It's so sick.
We go to some kid like that. That's what it would be like, though. In the 70s, you go. My mom bought everything at garage sales in the 70s. So some kid would be going away to college in the neighborhood, and we go to his garage sale, and I'd have all his old toys that he had in 62 or 63 or whatever. Like, oh yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's how it was. I mean, what happened with comic books? We read them and we had kept them in stacks, and eventually they ended up in boxes, and they ended up down in the basement with the old newspapers to be, taken out, bundled up and taken out. And those of us, and the kids, at 60s, now not in necessarily 62, but in the 60s and early 70s. I mean, we were swapping those things around, and and all of that stuff. Same with the trading cards. And it's cool that you mentioned that trading cards, the Mars Attacks. I didn't realize that those came out in 62. That's pretty cool. But yeah, the monsters
thing. I thought it was a bit earlier than that, but it says 1962. The Mars Attacks cards came out.
That's really cool.
I didn't realize that was from back then. I thought the movie that they made, 20 years ago or something, was like, I had no idea. That was based off the stuff way back in the 60s.
Oh no, that was just Tim Burton was a huge fan of those trading cards. If you were a monster collector or a comic book fan, those cards were notorious because, and Max can probably tell you, I don't know if you saw them at the time, they were incredibly violent illustrations on the cards.
Right.
Like, it was okay
people
back
getting
then.
Incinerated. Yeah, I think one of the most notorious ones, of course, is the aliens are shooting some kid's dog. It's just getting fried. They were incredibly violent cards, so they were highly sought after by monster collectors or baby boomers later on in life. And of course, that's why Tim Burton made that, and that sort of, now there's all sorts of repro cards out there and toys and models and all stuff.
Remaking old stuff again. They just keep remaking the old stuff.
There you go. So what else did we want to go into? What else did you find interesting about 1962? Real quick.
Well, I mean, it seems to be that there were a lot of crazes happening there. We had the space race, we had the monster fandom, we had comic books, and what was one of the other ones? There's a very significant film that appeared in 1962, Max, that we were discussing.
Max Goes to Hollywood
With it's a gentleman who's
it's a Mad
often known
Maximus.
to enjoy he enjoys his martinis shaken,
not stirred. Yep, that was Sean Connery. Came out Dr. No, the first James Bond 007 movie. Yeah, so a lot of great firsts.
Started off with spy craze.
Yeah, and that ties into other stuff that was going on, like we were talking about. We had the space race stuff going on. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. Everybody was afraid of the Ruskies and the Martians, and so yeah, it was interesting. Like I said, so like from the beginning, when people would say, would probably not necessarily think of 1962 as being a pivotal year, but there are so many things. Just a couple of wacky things that I found. Okay, keep in mind, like we all know the famous Marilyn Monroe "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" thing. We've probably seen clips of that. That took place May of 1962 at Madison Square Gardens, and the same Marilyn Monroe was found later on dead from an overdose in August 5th, 1962. So, some cool stuff. Yeah. The first Taco Bell, the first Walmart, the first Kmart.
I know Walmart was so old. And Taco Bell.
Yeah, the Taco Bell opened up its first store in Downey, California.
Yeah. But, I never remember. I think Max, you and I were talking about this. I never saw a Walmart till the 90s.
Yeah, me too.
No, I mean,
I don't know where the heck it exists. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody somewhere in the country. They were everywhere. But where I live, there was never a Walmart.
Well, it could have been like a lot of the stores. I mean, it was just they opened up one and then one more later. I mean, they didn't just throw them up and 50 of them up at one time. So that's because because I remember Kmart before I remember Walmart.
Yeah,
funny,
way long time.
And because prior,
I remember Kmart that I remember.
Yeah, I mean ours was Kmart, and as a matter of fact, when Rich and I were talking about this one day, I say I can vividly remember the Kmart because as a matter of fact, after I first got my driver's license, the first trip that I finally took as a licensed driver by myself was I went from my house to Kmart. Yes, sir. So
what were you going to buy at Kmart?
On a paper license with no photograph. On a paper license with no photograph.
Correct. Right. No photograph. It wasn't like the hard card thing that you had now.
It's a piece of paper.
No.
Just deteriorating.
I mean, well, you think about it back then. I mean, in 1970 something, when I got that, I mean, we didn't even have social security numbers all the time, until, not everybody did. But, it's kind of weird, so. Yeah, it was 1962. The Seattle hosted the World's Fair. Let's see, what else did I come up with? Oh, Decca. Here's some pop culture for you. Decca turned down a record deal for a little British band called the Beatles. I don't know if you might have heard of them.
The real Beatles.
Heard something about them.
Yeah, I think there's that guy, that Ringo guy in there. Some other famous people that were in there, but so it's and despite being turned down by Decca Records, the whole Apple thing, at that time Apple Records, somehow they got their music out there and got kind of popular.
It's crazy. It's crazy. There's a lot of good TV shows are back, and I was looking at a small list of some of them, and so the Match Game actually started in 1962, which was I used to love the the new Hanna-Barbera cartoon series, University Challenge, trivia show. I mean, there's so many things that really came out then. I mean, I just told you guys before, the Lloyd Bridges show. I had no idea he had his own TV show for a year. I guess it wasn't that popular.
King Kong versus Godzilla came out in 1962.
There you go. And there's a classic nobody will ever forget unless you're not, in this country, I would imagine, or Japan, right? But very, very good. Very, very good. GE. Oh, this I remember seeing this GE True. So General Electric sponsored a show called GE True just for a year, and they're just episodes based on stories from True magazine. I mean, like we're just gonna take a magazine and put TV shows based on the articles in there. It's just
There
it's
you go.
really amazing. It really is. There's just so much stuff going on, and everything was like they were pioneering television back then, right? I mean, it was all newer stuff. And I remember we were talking something real quick, but Rich had said something to me about a while ago. We were talking about like the old was it the Star Trek show or something that you told me the Batman show. The colors were so vivid and vibrant because of the technology that they had for TV shows, and like you use that to, it's not like today where you could basically have 80 shades of purple and you could see it in your LED TV now. It wasn't like that back then, right? Televisions were much different. They were bubbly and bubble fronts on them. They weren't always flat, and they were big ass heavy pieces of equipment and so on. But yeah, just really amazing to see how much things have changed. Sometimes for the better, sometimes I don't know. Sometimes
Well, that's the cyclical nature of time.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, guys, we'd better get back into this time machine and get back to our own period before people start to notice how strangely we're dressed, and before someone tries to take all these amazing fantasy 15s from me.
Hang on, help me with these eggs.
sure.
I'm grabbing all these. I'm grabbing all these eggs, man. Here, carry. Help me carry these. I mean,
Max-
it's got to be Easter, and
He's grabbing all the trading cards and bringing them back with the chalky bubble gum.
that's right.
Lou, what are you doing with all that hair tonic? They sell it in our time period.
I think I just get a toupee while I'm down here. That's probably a good idea.
Well, this has been
Lou,
a lot of.
why did you get that Mo Howard wig? It looks awful.
Oh, which
They
later
told him it
turned
was
the
Paul.
other way. That later
They
turned
told him it
into
was a Paul McCartney wig.
Yeah, it became the cousin
Oh,
Oliver
it's a
later.
Beatles wig. Oh, I see now.
There you go.
Oliver later. All right, let's get in the time machine and let's get rolling.
Let's blast off. Let's get back to our time. But yes. Well, this has been a lot of
Paul
fun, guys.
Freeze is with us.
Always a lot of
Paul
fun.
Freeze. Hey, Paul. So anyway, this has been a lot of fun. I'm Max Overnighter, and you can find me on the Facebook group Migo Like, and every once in a while, some of these other sites around. Thanks for coming along.
Richard
I
Maximus.
am Dr. Durant, also known as Rich Hurley. You can find me on YouTube at Dr. Durant Sanctum, and on Facebook at Dr. Durant Sanctum.
You need to get your own domain, damn it. DrDurankSanctum.com. That's what you need. You need to get your own
Yeah,
domain.
I'll probably have to do it.
You don't have to put up a web page. You just need to get your own damn domain so you can get emails to Dr. Durant at
I have a
DrDurant.com. That's what you do.
I have a small rabid fan base.
That's all right. That's okay. Listen, after they listen to this, you'll grow. Another million listeners. You'll see. It's coming. I'm Lou Malagrana. I am wearing a Mo toupee right now. And you can find me on Migo Like. You can find me on YouTube on My Migo Like. We also have a website, mymigolike.com. We post all kinds of old stuff. I'm trying to keep it clean. I'm trying to remember not to use the profanity as much. Try to keep that down. But yeah, this has always been fun with you guys. You guys are always a pisser. And none of this is rehearsed, by the way. This is all kind of done off the cuff, so everybody knows we just throw a framework together. It's basically like press the go live button and let's just start talking. It's usually how it runs out. But no, it's always fun. Thank you everybody for listening. And until next time. Anybody else? Maximus? You good?
I'm
All right.
good.
Good night.
All right.
Good luck. And God bless.
We are leaving.